Ohio, Sakai, good morning, world. A couple of days ago, I was bed rotting at 3 AM, as one does sometimes, until I came across a Danganronpa 2 octagon joke. Now, I normally skip right past these, since 8 times out of 10 they are probably not going to be funny. But maybe I was just fully consumed by the rot at this point, since I was actually curious and looked into why a question this stupid was asked in chapter 4 of the game. In doing so, I found out that this question makes a lot more sense in the original Japanese version of the game, for reasons I'll get into a little bit later. Guess you'll have to stick around to find out. This had me thinking about other instances in other media where a plot detail, concept, or joke only really makes sense in the original language. Not mistranslation per se, just things that are technical to get around when translating said media to a different language. A perfect example of this and good starting point would be...
Leon backwards!
Leon? Leon, oh my god! It literally says Leon!
That says Leon upside down. Oh my god.
In the first case of Danganronpa 1, there is a very infamous dying message left behind by the victim Sayaka, which the characters read as 11037. But in the trial, we get the shocking reveal that Sayaka was actually spelling Leon's name instead of these random numbers. So to most people who can read English, it's pretty obvious what Sayaka was actually trying to spell, which can make a majority of the case feel like a waste of time outside of teaching you the mechanics of the game and getting you comfortable with the setting and formula, of course. However, when you consider that this game was initially written for a Japanese audience, this makes much more sense, since they wouldn't spell his name in English. To demonstrate how hard this would be, this is Leon's name in kanji. So imagine this, but now backwards and upside down. Yeah, needless to say, it becomes a bit harder. Translating this game to English turned this slightly difficult mystery into an absolute walk in the park for a lot of people. Having an English puzzle can cause some problems for the translators, no doubt about that. But since it's possible for English readers to not get this one right away, they didn't really have to try that hard to get around it when translating. I would give this like a C for a decent attempt. But what do you do when characters speaking a different language is an important plot point? Well, this next show has some very interesting ways of tackling this issue.
However, there is no vibration of the voice after singing enthusiastically, which is hard for you to imitate. Again.
I love me some Dr. Stone, and it actually has a couple of scenes throughout its seasons which are very difficult to translate. Let's go one by one and see how they got around some of these. In season 2, Senku and Gen attempt to fool their enemies into thinking that the USA has escaped the petrification beam by playing a record from famous singer Lillian Weinberg and having Gen almost flawlessly imitate her voice. Now, the first problem comes from the fact that during some parts, Gen is speaking English and Senku acts as his translator.
I'm calling from USA.
この電話はアメリカからです。
Everywhere in Japan, please listen to me.
聞いてください、日本の皆さん。
But obviously, this wouldn't make sense in the dub because they're already speaking English. So, in the dub, they changed Senku's role to being Lillian's assistant, and Senku just kind of repeats what Gen says but words it a bit differently.
I'm calling from the US of A.
Yes, we're in America at this very moment.
Y'all in Japan should listen to what I'm fixing to tell y'all.
What she's about to say is extremely important.
I actually give major props to the dub team for this because I honestly thought they'd just do a persona and just ignore the fact that Senku is translating English into English. And honestly, that would have been fine. But they put the effort in to change this scene, so honestly I have to respect it. The next issue crops up a bit later into the season, when Ukyo finally catches on to Senku and Gen's plan and speaks in English to communicate without alarming the rest of Tsukasa's people.
However, there is no vibration of the voice after singing enthusiastically, which is hard for you to imitate. Again.
I first watched this in Japanese and thought it was near impossible to get around, but my brain is clearly not as big as the Dr. Stone English translation team because they came up with this.
Ukyo may have busted us, but he said it so softly. Because he didn't want the others to hear what he was saying.
Having Ukyo speak softly instead of English is a really smart way to get around this one. The Dr. Stone team is 2 for 2 so far, but I think this third and final example shows that sometimes the best move is to not play. Fourth and final season, Senku gets sniped in America, but he made a makeshift bulletproof vest leaving him on 1 HP. As Francois is tending to his wounds, they make this claim.
英語ですと, if it was headshot, it would have been an instant death.
So now you may wonder, how could the dub possibly handle a line where the direct point is to translate something into the English language? They just kind of ignore it.
That's how he survived. By design. If it was a headshot, he would have died instantly without fail.
To be fair, this was probably the easiest one to get around considering Francois had negative reason to say this in English. Dr. Stone has a fair few instances of hard to translate plot points and dialogue, but the dub team was able to get around all of them quite well in my opinion. I give them a crispy A+ for excellent effort. Okay, so we've seen examples of changing around some things to make more sense and knowing when to leave dialogue or plot points alone if they can still work in an English dub context. So now you may be asking, what happens if it makes no sense at all, but you still don't change it for whatever reason? Well, then you get these scenes from Danganronpa 2.
What is the octagon? I haven't heard about that yet. Oh my.
Very cool. An octagon is a shape with 8 sides, right?
Danganronpa 2. The reason this video exists in the first place. I feel for Hajime honestly, he gets bullied for being dumb or illiterate for reasons out of his control. In Trial 4 of this game, there is a very infamous scene where Hajime must figure out what an octagon is. Now to me or you, this might sound like a very stupid question which has made it become a meme in the fandom and to Hajime looking very stupid. But in Japanese, this makes a lot more sense because Nagito is saying octagon in English throughout the whole trial, so everyone else ain't got a clue what he's on about.
ほら、僕がオクタゴンで見つけたものだよ。
そのオクタゴンってのは何なんだ？それを聞いてねえぞ。
Honestly, I don't know how they could have changed this when localizing the game, but like, I don't know, they could have at least tried something. But to be fair, even if they tried something in that one instant, God only knows how they would have got around some of this other stuff. There are quite a few scenes in Danganronpa 2 where Hajime is reading something in English but just can't understand it. In chapter 2 he can't read this pamphlet, and in Akito's room he can't read Monokuma's special poisoning for poisoning use only, so he thinks it's protein powder. This all makes sense if you're playing the game in Japanese. It's understandable he doesn't know other languages. But if you're playing it in English, Hajime just seems illiterate. It's so unfair. Honestly, given the circumstances, Danganronpa 2 should get a comfortable E for not attempting to make any of this make sense in the English localization. But I honestly do think a lot of this is too hard to get around, and in the grand scheme of things, these parts don't really affect the game at all. So I'm willing to slap them with a C-, a sorry you had to deal with this rating. I mean, it's not like those ratings even matter anyway, bro, let's be honest. This video was a bit different from what I usually make, but I had a lot of fun researching and talking about some of these, so I hope that enjoyment carried over into the video. If you've got any hard to translate scenes, plot lines, or dialogue in some of your favourite media, feel free to share them down below and I might make a part 2 to this video. I know I personally have a few more that are pretty interesting and could make a very enjoyable part 2. But unfortunately for now, this is where we part ways. Please subscribe!